Hello and welcome back to this podcast. It's been quite a while since I've personally been on. Today we have lovely Diane.
Hi.
Um, Diane, do you want to tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and maybe how you know me?
Okay, so my name's Diane, and I know Josh because I'm dating his brother. And we have somewhat opposing views on some things we've noticed, but we're
Mm.
very good at talking about it
Hmm.
without getting, into too heated anything. I think we do a good job of that.
So the reason I've got Diane on today is because we disagree on many subjects, but Diane is able to argue her points articulately, and
Thank
I
you.
think it would make for a good conversation. So straight into the controversy, right?
All right, go for it. Go for the jugular.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for the jugular. You like Donald Trump, right?
There
Do
are a lot of Donald Trump's policies that I think were good
so.
policies.
Do you want to start by telling me what you? I mean,
So the first one, the main one, which I wasn't even sure of myself at first, was the fracking
mm,
because it's made the states energy independent, which is a big deal. The reason why our inflation has gone so high is because electricity prices have jumped. The reason why electricity prices have jumped is because oil prices jumped. That was because of the Ukraine war and, to a degree, lockdowns in the pandemic.
mm-hmm,
So all of that means that, well, especially because of the Russia stuff and the Ukraine war,
mm-hmm,
that if you have to buy most of your oil on the international market, it's going to be way more expensive for you. So then your inflation for that country goes higher. So the states have had a much easier time of it, in a sense,
mm-hmm.
since the start of the Ukraine war in terms of electricity prices and everything, mainly because they have enough energy to supply themselves because they started fracking. Before they started fracking, they didn't. They had to import they had to import oil from the international market to, keep up themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But because they have enough themselves, they don't need to do that. Their inflation has been much better. There's a couple other reasons why their inflation has been better, but that's a big one. And that was a Trump policy. And as much as, fracking, I get it. It sounds scary. I've seen a lot of videos of people running their taps where they put a lighter to it and, the water catches fire and things like that. And people who live in areas where fracking
I've
happens.
not seen any of that stuff.
Oh, I've seen some crazy stuff. But, they're YouTube videos. So on the one hand, who knows? And on the other hand, I think a lot of those were from the UK where it's more risky to do it here because a lot of the oil that you would be fracking is closer to this. Oh no, sorry, it's deeper in the surface from the surface,
Mm-hmm.
whereas in the states it's a lot closer to the surface, so they don't have to drill as deep. It's less likely to cause earthquakes and all that stuff.
I actually don't know too much about fracking, to be honest. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and be a professional. I know they pump gas into the ground, all gas into the ground at very high pressures to break apart the ground basically, and then
Basically, yeah,
suck out the oil that's
pretty
in
much.
there. Um, I guess being a climate activist, I am very opposed to any new forms of oil or gas production. But I understand we kind of need it now for a transition.
Yes.
But I think that transition needs to be as rapid as possible. Like,
And I don't disagree with you, but I think we have different definitions of as soon as possible. Because to me, as soon as possible means as fast as we can go, where doing it doesn't harm us more than what climate change will. You know what I mean? In the meantime, it's no good all of us starving to death and being, and having no money base or so freezing to death or starving to death from, some of the policies that we'd have to do to meet the targets that people want to meet in time.
mm-hmm.
It would bankrupt us. So, we'd be, like I say, we'd be cold and starving far sooner than we die from anything to do with climate change.
Mm,
So you're choosing one evil over another, and one is going to kill us a lot sooner.
see, I think we should have started the transition like decades ago. Um, the reason it would cause so many problems now to cut off oil and gas is because of the speed of which it needs to be done. to meet the climate targets.
Yes, but the other bad or hard thing is that I personally don't think we still don't have the technology to do it really, the
Yeah.
full transition. I mean,
I mean, it'd be very expensive.
well, even if it was, it's not even that. It's just that if we stopped oil tomorrow and tried to run everything on renewables,
Won't be able to.
no, we wouldn't. We could do it on a windy, sunny day, or a very windy or very sunny day, or a combination of the two. But any time that that falls short, we'd be screwed on that day or that month because right now we need to back it all up with oil because
Yeah,
we can't store it.
yeah, you need a base load to
Exactly.
take the base load. You see, more recently, I'm starting to lean towards it. Maybe it's too late to do anything about it. There's an ashtray. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe it's too late to do anything. Maybe it's too late to transition as fast as we need. But like, I still think there's hope. But what I think we need is like, so basically, when World War Two started,
Yeah.
like America and the UK, you basically got the entire country's economy and fucking tipped it like this into the war effort.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, you know,
You're right. All hands on
all
deck.
hands on deck. Like,
Yep,
it
even
was,
the ladies got
yeah,
involved. Yeah.
it was literally a
Guys
fight.
went off to war, the ladies went in the factories to keep them pumping.
It was
Yeah,
literally a fight for survival.
it was.
And I believe that the environmental secretary said we need to take like a war-like footing. We need that level of response, in my opinion, and the opinion of quite a number of organisations,
Yeah.
to really stop runaway climate change.
It's, I don't disagree again, but we don't have the tools to do that with. It's no good going to war with the Germans if you don't have any tanks. It doesn't matter how much you throw at it. It doesn't matter how much you pump out of the factories. If you've got guys on horseback going against tanks, you're gonna lose.
Thing is, we talk about energy supply, so like,
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of things that could be done that aren't being done. So like, maybe there are a few holes. Energy storage is a big problem,
That's a huge one.
but there's home insulation. Like we could insulate.
We
We
could.
could insulate all the old housing stock.
It'd be easier to, I mean, but it's feasibility and it's cost. So, I mean, you can make new legislation so that any new homes that are built have to be, insulated to a certain degree, which I think they have updated. I'm not saying they've gone far enough, but I think they
Oh, when they're
have.
far enough.
All right. But, there's a lot of things, and I say this obviously as a foreigner. And by the way, if anyone was wondering, I'm Canadian. I'm not American. Just to make that clear.
Don't
But
even
but in Canada, we build a lot differently. We build, okay, it's not the most environmentally friendly, but we build a lot with timber because we have timber in abundance. And we insulate a lot more because it's bloody cold in the winter. It gets to -20, -40. So we all have well insulated homes with I don't know the ins and outs of what's considered top line insulation, but
it's very better than here.
we all have two layered walls with, the cavities filled with that Pink Panther. There are other brands available, I'm sure. But, that's the one I always see. The pink fluffy stuff that's in between every cavity wall, and everybody has triple ply windows. I mean, I came here and they're like, "Oh, do you want double ply windows?" I was like, "Seriously, that we're still on double ply?" It's just, okay, it doesn't get as cold as Canada, but that's just standard in Canada. So there's something there that's different in the building regulations that somehow we've made that work in Canada it hasn't worked here.
I think the point is there are many solutions that could be. There's a lot of technologies and solutions
Yeah.
that are simply ignored, dismissed, or not used at all.
There are more that could be used better. I agree with that. But I think the argument against that would be even if you make that for every new home, the difference is in Canada, most people live in newer homes because we're building houses all the time, constantly. And when you buy an older home, most people are buying it to flip it or upgrade it, so then they'll do that off their own backs because it doesn't make sense to have a house in Canada that's not insulated.
Here in the UK, though, most of our houses are old,
Exactly.
like old terraced houses,
Exactly.
and the drafty. There's a lot of
Yes.
single glazed houses,
Yeah.
like with basically very
So,
little insulation.
like in terms of things that the government can do, it's not too hard. They could make legislation to do with new house building, but
Hmm.
that's only going to apply to the new houses. Like you say, that doesn't apply to most of the housing
When
stock in the country.
when the Conservative government came in, they actually lowered the insulation requirements for new UK homes.
Okay, but to do you know any details? I mean, was it from triple ply to double ply or I, I
I
mean,
think,
still, that's kind of silly. I agree
yeah,
with you there. And they haven't built enough homes as well. I'm not going to say the conservative government's perfect. No government's perfect. But yeah, no, that was a stupid move. Why would you downgrade it? There must have been, unless there was a good reason. Maybe it was
well,
making it too expensive for developers and then they weren't building enough homes. And
maybe
now we're in a housing crisis.
maybe the developers are buddy buddy with the politicians, and it's costing them too much money.
Possibly, but that's probably just as true on the labor side as well.
Yeah. And so back to Trump, right? What else do you like about this man?
I like that he wanted to control the borders with the wall.
Hmm.
And the thing about that, it can sound heartless, but the thing is, if unless you have a way to screen who's coming into your country and who isn't. So I mean, whenever we go on holiday and we all buy a plane ticket,
Hmm.
you have to put in your passport details and everything when you buy that plane ticket so that they know who's leaving the country and who's coming back. Because if you buy a one-way ticket to somewhere, when you arrive, they're going to ask you what's your plan while you're here. Because you're
Hmm.
going to have to earn a living. You're going to have to. So,
Isn't America a country of immigrants anyway?
yes, but those were legal immigrants because at the time, the states needed people and threw their doors open because they were so desperate for a population and said, everyone come. That's not always true. That gets to a point where then, okay, we've got enough people to make things run now. Now we need to control it so we don't have more people coming in than we can deal with at a time.
Hmm.
I'm an immigrant, but
You're actually making that sound quite reasonable, to be honest. Like,
well, it's reasonable.
see, a lot of my listeners that are already subscribed would probably be on the left wing side of things,
I'm
but
not surprised, but
it's the way you package it. You do make it sound reasonable, but like, and then,
well, let me give you a scenario here. So, one of my best friends she lives in the States. She's American. Her name's Heather. I don't think she'd mind me saying that. But, and she's the most liberal left wing you get. She's a devout Catholic at the same time, but she's very left wing. And last time I spoke to her, we were talking about stuff like this, and she was saying she was an advocate for, why don't we just have open borders? I said, okay, let's just play that scenario through.
mm,
So say tomorrow you open the borders.
hmm
Every poor person from every poor country is gonna move to a rich country. Wouldn't you? If you grew up in
I
a poor
wouldn't blame
country and
them.
you were a poor person, I don't
I
blame
don't
them
blame
either.
them. You would do
No,
like,
you would. Why wouldn't you? You'd be an idiot not to, really. If suddenly they threw open the borders and you have the chance of a better life, you go for it. So then every poor person moves to every rich country. So all those poor countries just empty. All the rich countries get packed with triple, quadruple, 10 times the population, if not more.
mm,
Suddenly, that rich country goes down. It's no longer a rich country, and everything settles and evens out. But the standard of living for everyone is now lower. So that's kind of a communist viewpoint. So instead of now there being rich countries that are great to live in and people have lots of opportunity, and poor countries where things suck and you maybe have a chance of getting out to a rich country if you're lucky, but there's that chance.
I
You no longer have that chance. Everybody's on the same level, but there's nowhere else to go and there's no way to better your situation.
personally, I think the solution for that, I don't know how much of a solution this is, but can't the richer countries invest into the poorer countries to make the raise their standards of living where they are, and then they
Yeah.
wouldn't need to have so many people leaving the country.
Well, they do. They have tried that. in principle, but they've tried it a couple different ways. You've got foreign aid, that's the government way of doing that. And then you have private company investment, where a lot of the time when that happens, they end up just making deals with the local warlords or whoever's in charge at the time of that militant group who took control. And that militant group ends up selling all their natural resources, and that's when you get the Exxons and the steel and all these coming in and just raping Africa for all their minerals. And then the Africans are pissed off because the Westerners are stealing all their resources, which they are. But they're doing it under the pretense of investing in the country because they're bringing jobs, because they don't send Westerners out to drill that oil or mine those minerals. They get Africans to do it. So it does bring jobs. It does help the economy to an extent.
But they're not really being paid for the mineral that the people.
No, they of course they're going to give them as short a deal as they can, because that is how companies operate. If you're going to do it through private entities and do it with private investment, that's always going to happen.
I would argue that the resources of the country should belong to the people. Like I think those companies should be paying the people for their resources as well as the jobs.
Well, how do you do that? The best way to do that is for a government of that country to nationalize that thing.
And we know when that tends to happen, Western countries tend to overthrow that government.
Well, sometimes there's an uprising, and a lot of those governments get overthrown for other reasons. And you can say, usually they happen organically. I wouldn't say that, and this is more of a belief because who knows? You never know. But my opinion, my belief is that these things tend to happen more organically. And then, the West and Russia and other people will throw their weight behind one side or another, behind whichever side they want to win. A lot of the time,
I mean,
it can do, but...
Thing is, just say that point.
Go on.
Sometimes it doesn't happen organically. Sometimes, like, so let's take the CIA, for example, or let's take, I don't know,
And they've had their hands
Let's take Iran.
Yeah.
They had a democratically elected leader who decided to nationalize the oil supply and kick out British Petroleum.
What era are we talking? What years?
1970s.
Okay, that recent.
1970s, yeah.
Okay, so this is before the Ayatollahs. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what happened? This has been declassified now. This isn't even a conspiracy. What happened is the British and the Americans collaborated to cause a coup d'état in that country. So they didn't. You can't say it happened organically. There were probably people in that country who wanted to overthrow that government already, but they were never going to get a chance to do so until they got weapons, training, supplies.
Well, it certainly helps, and that's what I mean. But you still have to have people there willing and ready to do it.
You've always got them though. You can find them in any country.
You can, but I mean, it doesn't always. It's hard to pull it off sometimes. Otherwise, Putin would have been assassinated already. There's got to be dissidents in the Russian government, and you don't think the CIA are there going, come on, we'll give you whatever you need, we'll help. Just take him out.
Yeah, but he's that's a different topic altogether.
Because it's a different scale, and it's better organized, and Putin's I don't want to praise him here, but he is a badass. I mean,
he's a badass.
He knows what he's doing to an extent. He still made mistakes, but
if I was in Putin's power, you'd consolidate your power. You would. You'd put people in positions that you trust and that can't betray you in a way. Like
you do, but you try your best. It doesn't always work. You're always going to have other governments interfering, trying to work against you. It's how it's. We act as if that's a modern thing. Of course it isn't. That's been going on since the beginning of time. It's not like the Americans are the only culprits of that. That's literally been going on since the beginning of time.
They've been the main actors in the last 50 years.
Okay, but 50 years is like on history's scale. I mean, around
50 years.
Look at Saudis. Where we have the Saudis, or at least they play both sides a bit. But at least they're trying to be more diplomatic. They're improving their human rights stuff very slowly. And I don't start. No, thanks. I mean, I'm no fan of the Saudis, or the Saudi government, I should say. Got nothing against Saudi people in general. But, they play both sides. But they have, they let women drive now. Woo! And, so they have improved things. And that is because of engagement with the West, but they're also able to do that while keeping the other Arab countries happy. And the Saudi, and where I'm getting at with all
Well,
this,
I mean,
the Saudi royal family came into power with the help of the West as well.
I want to say, I'll take it back to without making it without what's keeping the Arab countries happy. Like, I don't think that's really a concern for Saudi Arabia. Like, let's say like they've got Yemen to the south, and they've basically had a blockade, a military blockade in Yemen, and been fueling a war in Yemen for the
Well,
last like 7 years.
well, it's
So
more,
that's
well, no, the Yemen, the Saudis, as far as I understand, are backing the Yemeni government and officials. It's Iran who are backing the is
no,
it
but the point, the
Hezbollah.
point,
I can't remember. Is it Boko Haram? No, it's another terrorist group who they're at war
well,
with, and they're backed by Iran. That's why it's a proxy war in
whichever way you
Yemen.
say it, like there's two sides and they're backing a side. But I read like
Yeah, but
like
it's
5 years ago.
Saudis versus Iran, essentially.
I know, it's a proxy war, but
Yeah,
I
but
read
that's
that
the two.
they were blockading the country, like they were blockading food supplies going in and creating a humanitarian
It's going out
crisis.
loads.
Um,
I don't know about Yemen. I can't say that. I'm not sure. Are you sure you weren't talking? They were talking about Gaza because
oh well,
Israel's had a blockade on Gaza since '07. I want to say.
that's horrendous. Before we get on to the,
I was gonna say we got to get to Israel at some point, but
oh God, before we get to that, because there's a lot of talk about that recently, I want to ask you about your stance on the struggle between capitalism and socialism.
okay. Both have their merits, and no good society can be completely one or the other. Is what I think. You've always got to have a mix of the two.
I agree. I agree.
I
I
was gonna
agree
say,
with
I
that.
think
Yeah.
most people would agree with that. Where everybody disagrees is where you slide that along the scale. How much socialism to how much
So
capitalism?
if
What's
you
that ratio?
if you was to look at say the United States right now as a country, and that sliding scale of capitalism and socialism,
They could probably do with
what
a little bit more socialism. I'll agree with that. I mean, when it comes to certain things, healthcare, for example, their healthcare system is just terrible.
I invited you
But
on because you were going to be very right wing, but you'd be very agreeable today.
it depends on which topic we talk about.
It is.
But but in the same breath, I mean, they're going when you talk about the education system and the university system, that's become very, very left wing. And you might as well smoke that. The one of the worst parts of, in my view, the left wing, the way that it's developed in more recent years, is cancel culture.
I don't think it's gone left. The thing is, like, I feel like the left and right, I've kind of gone like that in a way. They've kind of just gone like
They have in a lot of regards. That's
like
I used to be left, and I always say I change sides when freedom of speech changed sides.
oh yeah,
Because it was the left who started canceling people. I'm not, you know. And I want to be clear. By canceling, I mean not people losing their jobs. Because I think if people have done a bad job at their job, they should be sacked. That's not canceling. Canceling is when you deplatform someone, where you
I don't
take
think that should
down.
happen to anybody.
I agree. You shouldn't be able to take down people's Twitter account or YouTube channel or any of those social media things. Even if they're the bloody Taliban. I mean, you can, put warnings on certain posts. You could maybe argue whether certain posts should be taken down or not. But whether an entire account or that
I
person's...
think advocating for violence. I think if you directly,
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you put a post up advocating violence or inciting violence, for sure, delete that should be deleted, or action needs to be taken of some kind. We can debate about that on its own, but I think it should be individual statements, not about that person
Yeah.
having an account to have a platform.
an interesting thing. You probably already know about this, but in the 1950s, I'm going to say, in the South of America, there was the civil rights movement. They were having marches in states where the Ku Klux Klan was still active.
In the 50s.
I think in 50s or 60s. I'm not somewhere in that
Yeah,
region.
no, actually, okay, yeah.
So it could have even been 40s. I'm not sure, but basically, so the civil rights would have their march, right, and they get a bit of pushback and whatever. But then the Ku Klux Klan would have their march
Yeah.
to counter to demonstrate against black people, and the governor of that state came in and proposed a ban on the Ku Klux Klan being able to march. And what happened is the leader of the civil rights movement in the area, in that state, came out against that law
Good.
happening
Well done
because
to him. That's
because
brave,
he
but
he said like
that's
if
principles.
we let the government legislate their speech and their protest, then on the next breath it's going to be used against my speech and my
Yes,
protest.
fully agree.
And at the end of the day, who gets to decide
Yeah.
what is truth? What gets censored?
Well,
What's not allowed?
but this is the thing. That's where there's a difference between truth and opinion. Truth is facts and figures and things that you can prove. An opinion is that person's opinion. So in the case of the Ku Klux Klan, their opinion is that white people are better than black people. I disagree with that. I'm pretty sure you disagree with that. Most people would disagree with that. But it's something that you can't really prove in a way because it's a belief, an opinion. So as much as a lot of us don't like it or might disagree with that opinion, they should still be allowed to say it.
I'm not. I would come at it from the other angle. Like if we give the power to a governing body to suppress somebody's opinion, they have to decide which opinions are dangerous.
Exactly, which opinions are right or wrong.
Yeah, and nobody can do that.
Exactly, an opinion isn't right or wrong. You can have, but then this is another thing. So again, truths and facts are things that are numbers. They're solid, logical things that nobody can argue with. But I also believe that when you're talking about any particular issue that needs to be resolved, there is always a winning argument. And this is where I hate it when people are having debates and, one person says their opinion and the other person says their opinion and they go, okay, we just agree to disagree. To me, if you agree to disagree, that debate failed. Sometimes you need to do that when people get too worked up. You need to abandon it and just leave it. And that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
But to me, the point of debate is to come to a winning argument where
Not a middle ground. Do you not think like
sometimes
an
a winning
understanding?
argument can be a middle ground. Sometimes it isn't, because sometimes it's about finding which one of these 2 points takes precedent.
Can I just say sometimes there's a lot of nuance to a point. Like there could be like it's something that someone's arguing, but it's very nuanced and
It can
there's
be,
different.
but people need to be clear with their points. And the more you nuance and stuff, then you're diluting your point in a way. Points have got to be to the point. You know what I mean? If you're going to have a solid argument, it's where one thing, sorry to use his name again, but where one thing trumps another. So when it comes to, say, all right, pick an example, the trans community, and for a trans woman, whether a trans woman should be allowed to use a woman's bathroom, for instance. I lived an example of this well before all this stuff started hitting the headlines and being debated about in the public realm. I worked at a pub where there was a guy, and I only say that because he lived during the daytime as a man. And then when he went out, either over evening or at the weekends when he came to the pub, then he dressed as a woman. So, anyways, whenever he came into the pub, she was a woman.
Okay.
So I would always, and just so everybody knows, I do use pronouns that people prefer if it's, and she clearly was dressed as a woman and wanted to be treated as a woman. So it doesn't take a genius to think, maybe I'll call her and she, because she's dressed as a woman.
It's just respectful, I think. Like just like
It's rude. But at the same time, I don't think rudeness should ever be illegal. It's just, it's like bad manners. Bad manners is bad manners, but that should never be illegal. People can't be arrested for bad manners.
Yeah.
And there's a distinct line between bad manners and hate speech, or, before anyone starts going on about that. But you know what I mean? Something like that, I think is just good manners. But anyways, point is, she was always dressed as a woman whenever she came into the pub. And one day, she asked our manager if she could use the women's toilet, if anybody minded. And the manager didn't quite know what to do, so he told her, leave it with me, I'll have a think about it and I'll come back to you.
Yeah, it's a difficult one that because if you're a man half the time, and you're a woman. I don't know.
Well, but like I say, whenever she came into the pub, she was always dressed as a woman. And she
Yeah,
was always, and she was very friendly. She was nice. I used to talk to her all the
yeah, I
time.
guess
She
so.
was
I mean,
non-threatening. I never felt threatened by her in any way whatsoever or anything like that. And but the point is, so the manager, what he decided to do was he called a team meeting of all the staff,
hmm
and he basically asked us, particularly the women, what do you guys think? What would you say? And all of us were just kind of like, yeah, she's fine. I don't, like I say, I don't feel threatened. And that's the only reason why we
hmm
wouldn't be okay with it. So, no, fine by us. So then he told her, yeah, it's fine.
hmm
So she was allowed to use the women's toilet. It was great. Everything went fine. I saw her in there a couple times. One time I told her that I liked her lipstick while she was putting it on and she was dead chuffed. And I realized that was for her, that was part of the experience of being a woman, was being.
Oh yeah, if you say it like that, I mean,
And
I guess
because
it
it
is
is,
really. It
it's
is.
girly talk while you're in there, you're doing your makeup, and it's nice to have a girl go, "Oh, that's a nice shade," or
Yeah, I guess if you want,
"I like your nails," just silly little things like that.
then again, if you was to use a man's bathroom, it's like urinals. It's like it's a different vibe. You know what I mean? It's.
Yeah, but if you're a trans man, maybe you want that as
Can I
well.
tell you? Can I tell you about how I first
Well,
ever?
hold
Go
on,
on,
but just let me finish that real quick.
go on then.
So, but in retrospect, looking back at that now, as much
hmm
as it went fine and there were no problems and everybody was happy, in retrospect, I don't think that was really the right thing for us to have done. Because as much as it was okay for us, the staff,
Mm.
we only asked the staff. What about other customers? What if
Mm.
there was a girl who came in for her first time and she went to use the bathroom and she was a rape victim? And,
Mm.
and then she goes in the bathroom and sees this lady in there, she might not feel so comfortable with it. We've just made that decision on her behalf. And I'm not sure that was the right decision. So as much as I don't want to, and this is where I'm talking about when two things,
You talk.
when two rights conflict.
You're talking about women's rights versus trans rights.
Exactly. So what comes first? Which one takes precedent? Well, it depends on the situation. In this situation, you're talking about one lady, this customer's safety, versus this trans lady's right to feel more like a woman.
Mm.
Now, as much as I want her to have the best woman experience and the most complete woman experience she can have, I'm not really willing to do that at the expense of another woman's safety. Because surely safety comes ahead of, I like your nails.
Mm.
Which one's more important?
Well, yeah, I think that's a quite.
I got
You
you
got me
there.
in a difficult spot. Like, yeah.
I got you there. See,
The thought,
winning argument. I
the
dare anyone to
thought.
come up with a contrasting argument on that one.
So here's my contrasting argument, right?
Okay.
For this trans woman, uh, by you denying her the right to use the bathroom, it affects her all of the time. Because your
Well, it
manager,
affects her when she goes to the
well,
bathroom.
yeah, but like, which is like if you're at the pub, it's like you go there like more than one, probably more than once.
Okay, yeah.
And the manager did ask all of you women, and you didn't feel threatened by it. But your argument bases on there could be a woman that does feel threatened.
Yeah.
So
As a
I'm
customer.
acknowledging that is a probability of it happening. But if
Mm-hmm.
that was to happen, like that woman would maybe she'd walk in, walk out. Maybe she would wait till she's at the bathroom. But basically the time, the chance of that happening, and the time it is only a fraction of the effect it would have on the
You
trans.
say that, but then what if that lady is? What if she was attacked in the bathroom?
All right,
That could bring it all back. That could affect her mental health for the next 6 months.
all right. So there is an argument that you're making here, and it is a valid argument because I have a friend who was basically saying she doesn't think that trans women should be allowed into there's certain basically there's homes for abused women were set up by
Yes.
women who've been sorry, that's just my tag five face charging, who have been women who have been like sexually assaulted or raped or
Yeah,
abused
homes
or
for, yeah.
homes for
What they
domestic
used to
abuse.
call homes for battered women is what they used to call them back in the
So
day.
those are like women only spaces. They don't allow men into those spaces because the women in that
Yeah.
space have been so like traumatized by the
Yeah.
hands of men.
You
Like
can't
it's just
expose them to that.
you
Yeah.
can't expose them to that. Now my friend, who I'm not going to name, she probably wouldn't mind being named, but was saying she doesn't think that trans women should be allowed into specifically those spaces
I agree with her.
where women have been, you got some very, very vulnerable women who
Yeah.
do like, need to be.
They've experienced some horrible things in a good majority of the cases.
But I think
And
the bathroom might not run to that same intent. There is an argument there, but
I
it's
did,
much of a
well,
smaller
no, it's
chance.
but again, it's just still the point. Which one is more important at the end of the day? As much as, like I say, as much as I want to include
I mean, you have to
that
do that.
trans woman as much as possible, we're not saying she can't go to the bathroom when she's at the pub.
I would say,
There's still, and I'm not likening this to a disability in
Mhm.
any way, but the disabled toilet is like a neutral toilet. So she's quite welcome to use the disabled toilet, you know?
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that if she puts on some lipstick when she sat at the bar, that one of us behind the bar won't say, then, I like your lipstick.
Do you know? I think you'd have the way to work this out is look at bars that have unisex toilets, and then look at the statistics of women physically being attacked in those toilets by people.
I
There's no evidence of anybody. Like, look, if you look
Well,
at,
there are some.
I've
It's
not
very rare. I'll give you that. Yeah, it's very rare and it's a very low percentage, but
even
it's not
it.
like it's never happened.
It's not like it's never happened, but I think it's very rare. It's such a
But
very.
in the same way where you're saying it's a small percentage of the time,
But
um,
that's
yeah,
straight men attacking women though. Like this
no,
is a
okay,
trans
no.
woman.
I'm saying it's where you were saying with the trans woman that for a woman who's been attacked or traumatized or whatever, it's a small amount of time that she's going to be in that bathroom. Whereas for the trans woman, it adds up to a lot
Mm.
more. You're talking about a small impact for the trans woman over a long period. Like that's what I'm arguing is that you're talking about how many times she's going to be able to do that, and it's causing a really low impact most of the time.
Mm.
Whereas I'm saying that doesn't matter because it only has to happen once, where some woman who has had a horrible experience comes in once and sees a trans woman there, and that affects her massively. So you're talking about a small instance with a big impact rather than a lot of little instances with very little
I
impact.
guess we're not really caught. Neither of us are uniquely experienced to. I mean, if I had somebody on who had been through domestic, like
Well, I
who'd
mean, it doesn't mean we're
been
not allowed to have an opinion. I don't
no,
have to be a
true.
domestic violence victim to feel for the girls, and
I'd be interested to hear their perspective, though, is what I'm
it'd be
saying.
more firsthand. Yeah, fair enough.
So I wanted to.
But then at the same
Go on.
time, one domestic abuse victim doesn't speak for all.
That's true.
So it's still common sense to a degree that, again, I come back to the original point. What is more important, one person's safety, because let's also, number of attacks is still very low, but there's still always the potential for it.
Hmm.
And that is a high risk thing in itself. That if you're making it so that it's easier for someone to be raped, that's a big deal compared to somebody's ability to be included in that one part of being a woman.
You'd have to
You,
look at you
because even then, that woman's experience of being able to use the woman's bathroom is a very small part of being a woman overall. It's one experience,
look at. So
but
can I say you'd have to look at the difference of. So we haven't got the statistics right now, but I imagine I want to ask you another question in a second about a different topic. But
okay, go on.
I can imagine you have to look at the statistics between unisex toilets and separated toilets to be able to make an informed decision on that matter.
You would, but you'd also. Oh, sorry. I don't. My own impression is that there aren't really that many and unisex toilets around, for one, and B,
Uh,
you've got to define what you mean, because I don't mind when you have separate toilets, but you have a communal sink area. That's not so bad.
Problem solved. Come on, is that not problem solved for everybody? Like,
All right, yeah. So you have a communal sink area. You got men's to one side, women's on the other side, and
not even.
other in front.
No,
That's
not even.
I.
There's toilets where it's literally shared sink, and then it's like individual toilets. There's no like cubicle. It's like actual rooms with doors. and you can like
No,
men
even
and women.
then, that's even worse because if you've got men and women sharing the space where you enter into the cubicles, it's the cubicles that are the problem because that's a place where you can hide. That's a place where you can do something out of view, and
Uh,
that's
anyway,
just a recipe for rape. That's the whole point.
we'd have to look at statistics, which we don't have. But I want to ask
Yeah,
you. I
that's what I
want
mean. Whereas sinks, if you got open sinks, it's all right. You can still rape a girl over top of a sink, but it usually, if it's just sinks, you can have that open to view.
to.
So where there doesn't need to be a door or anything, so that bit's open, and then the doors, it's enclosed
I want to change the
spaces.
subject. Ask you something
All right, go
else.
on.
Okay. So me and you have recently had a conversation about anxiety and depression. It was
Oh,
only a brief conversation, but
all
let
right.
me just add the context. So
It's gonna be
I
tough for me.
just flow naturally. I mean, just and give your honest opinion. But like, I recently went through a period of having anxiety attacks, which I didn't realize were anxiety attacks until I was having anxiety attacks without realizing I was anxious. But I'm going to
Okay.
say, and that anxiety was causing me to focus heavily on my breathing, feel like I couldn't get a full breath, feel like I was getting like more chest pains. And
Mm.
I've looked this up like uh, there's having anxiety can make you feel like you're about to have a heart attack because you're anxious about having a heart
Okay.
attack.
There's
And
two things you're kind of lumping together there. What you're the incident, the thing you're talking about, the chest pains and hard to breathe and all that, that's a panic attack. That's a recognized thing, a panic attack. Anxiety, then you're talking more the mental health, what's going on in your head versus what's going on in your body,
I think it's
right?
all connected.
But you're talking about it as if it is connected, but the thing I agree that people have panic attacks. I'm not saying that those aren't
What do
real.
you think triggers panic attacks then, if not mental health?
Mental health. But this is where I get controversial
Okay,
because I think that you can it's
getting
going to
that, getting
sound
that,
really
getting
it's going to
that.
sound really flippant, but you essentially work yourself into a tizzy where you're letting your thoughts get away with you. You're putting yourself into a little negative thought spiral. And
Yes.
you're not, as an adult, my personal belief is that you should be capable of catching yourself in that negative thought spiral and
Always thought.
going, hold on, what's the point of this? Why am I putting myself into a little dark hole where I just want to lay in
Mm.
a corner in a dark little hole and cry to myself when I can just stop this right now and say, I need to watch a funny movie.
Do you know what it's like? Right, because I do understand. I respect. I agree with what you just said.
Instead of carrying it on until the point where you start having a panic attack.
So sometimes you can be sometimes maybe you don't realize that straight away that you're doing it to yourself, and maybe maybe you say why can't I stop? You know what? I know this is damaging. Why am I continuing to do it?
Yeah.
And then sometimes people can think, well, maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe I'm not strong enough. And then that can feed into the cycle.
You're as strong
But
as you
but
think you are. You're as whatever as you're only it's like if you don't use it, you lose it. You only know how strong you are if you test yourself. That's people giving up and giving in.
mm,
And
I
and
so
as
I
as
think
much as okay, so there are some people I'll have sympathy for in that
mm,
regard. Like the reason why I said any adult is for
mm,
a reason because children are children. So if it's a kid, whatever, that's kids.
mm.
I'm never gonna criticize a kid for anything like that. But as an adult, that's part of being an adult. And okay, some people haven't had the best upbringing, and maybe that's all they've known, and they just saw their parents do that, and they've known nothing else. And all right, I'll give those people a bit of a pass too. But you're not one of those people.
Can I just say, I think so. Having an anxiety attack or depression or whatever but depression is another word. But
Depression is a different thing,
every
but
time you allow it to happen without intervening,
mm,
you're building that like that neural pathway stronger each time. And I think there becomes a point when that pathway is very very fucking strong and it's almost overwhelming. And why I kind of started to get there myself before I managed to turn it around
mm.
with a healthy dose of magic mushrooms, I might add. But it's almost like imagine you are your conscious mind, and I am your unconscious mind, and
Yeah.
you keep telling yourself that it's bullshit, but I keep punching you in the chest, and you can literally
Yes, I
feel,
know, but I
and
agree. You're still
and
choosing to do it. You're still
no,
consciously.
no, no, your unconscious mind
Yeah,
now
I know.
is giving you that is causing the problems for you because
It is, but
you
you in your conscious mind are choosing to listen to your unconscious mind.
but the thing is, your unconscious mind, you can fight against it, but it's difficult because like,
Okay, let me give you something. I liken it to a drug problem. I've had drug problems. I had a cocaine problem for a while. And whenever people say it's, oh, it's an addiction, it's a mental health issue, it's, we need to just help people. No, you can't help people. They have to help themselves. I'm sorry, but you give people money, they're just going to go spend it on more coke. That's what I would have done if you'd have given me money at that point. All what turned me around was running out of money, full stop. So if you'd have given more money, you'd have just been enabling me. And B, the point that I was fed up of living like that.
mm,
And the whole time of getting from having a good life where I had a good solid job and I was living life and it was normal, got a little boring, but whatever. And I started partying. But then it became more than partying. And then before I knew it, I was doing a line when I first got up in the morning. And then that was the first thing I thought about. And that was my whole life, was just making sure I had enough blow for that day. And it was so much easier. And it was like taking a break from life. It's when you've had enough of life and trying and you're just like, screw it, I'm not even going to try anymore. I'm just going to go have fun. And I'm happy that I remember there was a line in Get Him to the Greek where he's talking about it, Russell Brand, and he says, your life's to-do list must be a mile long, whereas mine is very simple. Drugs, and that's it. It's nice and it's simple, and that's why you do it, because you just check out. But you know what you're doing the whole time. Every time you go and grab, you know exactly what you're
every
doing.
time you do it though, you're not like making that
You
habit
do.
stronger. You're
You're
not like,
making, no, but you're making, you know that you're going another step further.
mm.
So you're making a conscious decision at that point to go another step further.
Thing is, like, can I ask, did you have other things going on in your life, like things that you had that you like a passion for, things that like,
Well, I did, but they were getting stomped on. It was when I had got my first university degree, thought that that meant that I was going to just walk into the job that I wanted and I'd be set for life, because that's what they all sold to us. You
hmm
get a university degree, you'll be fine. It doesn't work like that in real life. So I got my first job in the career that I wanted. I was lucky to have gotten that far.
hmm
And I was making basically minimum wage and I wasn't really getting anywhere. And and I was going to have to just wait around for the person above me to retire to hope for anything better.
hmm
And I also kind of thought that at that point that I'd done the wrong degree essentially for what I wanted to do, and was thinking, does this mean I need to go back again and do it all over? And so
mm.
it was one of those where I was just sort of getting, like I say, I just needed a break from life where I was like, no, you know what, I've had enough of trying. I just want to check out and try not trying for a while.
Can I ask what was it that made you, um, well, you said running out of money, but like was it like a mental place you came to? Because there was, if you
Yeah, it
continue
was
not,
the I don't want to live like this anymore. It was the okay, I've had enough of this. Even if I can't, even if I'm not necessarily going to get the job that I dreamed of when I was a kid, or that, even if things don't go according to the plan I originally had, it can be better than this. I don't want to have to scrounge from meal to meal. I don't want to have to worry about rent every month. I don't want to have to worry about which bill I'm skipping this month. I'd rather have some money in my bank account. And
yeah,
basically, I'm watching the debts pile up on the different credit cards. I'm running out of credit cards to use. And you're just kind of like each, and you think about it a few times. I'll give you that, where you think, I'm that deep in what's another 5 grand. And then you go that other 5 grand and you go, geez, it's going to take me forever to take me out of this hole.
hmm
Do I really want to bother turning it around now, or I could just go get another line and forget about it for another weekend? But you only do that so many times, and then you go, okay, I'm running out of options. We've exhausted everything here. It's time to just start digging. You know? Well, stop
Yeah.
digging the hole and start digging your way out,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
There
I get
comes a
that. I feel.
point where you just like that. I gotta stop digging now. So and part of it was also how old I was and doing the math. So I
How
was
old was
thinking
you?
late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking if I don't start turning it around soon, I'm gonna be like 50 before I'm out of debt. Whereas if I start turning around now, I might be 40. You know, thankfully I got out of debt sooner than that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I was thinking at the time. And it was like, I do want to get married and have kids and have a life at some point. I don't want to do this the whole rest of my life. So if I don't start digging my way out now, I'm going to run out of chances.
Mm.
So it was a conscious decision, but I wouldn't ever say, oh, I was depressed or oh, I needed help or oh, I would have done it sooner if I'd have had counseling or something. No, I'd have told that counselor to fuck off.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not about that. You know what you're doing. You choose to do it at the time for good reason because
I think a lot of people take drugs to kind of numb life.
exactly, that's what I was doing. I was fed up of life and I needed a break. So the break is numbing.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally what it is.
So back to anxiety for a second, like.
Sorry, yeah, I took us off
No,
on a
it's okay. No,
tangent
that's
there.
good. Tangents are good. I like tangents. Well, I want to know. I'm going to go to depression actually because it's kind of like a similar kind of thing. But
It's
the
similar,
argument
yeah.
I would make what causes it is I think it can be like a bit of a feedback cycle. Like the more you get depressed, the more you put yourself down, the more. I think I see the way I see
I
it.
don't fully disagree, but I'll let you finish.
Let me finish, right? So, I look at it as every single thought is a drip of water, right? And you can have like, say if you have like negative, say if you think, oh, I am ugly or I'm fat or I'm stupid, each one of those is a drip. And if you think it every single day, it's dripping every day, it's
Yeah.
creating a bit of a puddle and a pool, like in your unconscious mind. So if you think, oh, I hate myself every single day for like a year,
Yeah.
you've got a sizable bit of a chunk of
Yes.
this belief within your mind. But if you're depressed, when you get depressed, people who are depressed tell themselves, "I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I'm not." And every single negative thought they have is creating more depression, which is then creating more negative thoughts, which is then creating more depression.
Okay.
And in
I
my opinion, it's like a bit of a
I get what you
cycle.
mean. Yeah. And a feedback loop. Yeah, totally get what you mean. And I agree to an extent, but I think it's to me, the way I think of depression is feeling trapped and that there's no way to better your situation.
Mm.
No matter what your situation is, for whatever reason, you're not happy with it. And that's usually okay if you can see a way out of it or at least steps to take and some light at the end of the tunnel.
Hmm.
It's when you're not seeing a light at the end of the tunnel anymore and you don't and you are trapped and you know that there's nothing you can do to
I
get
think
out
I
of
think you're
that.
trapped by your thoughts, though.
Well,
I think that cycle's kind
to
of
a degree, you can be
all the
trapped
time.
by life events. And that's where I think a lot of the time people have a good reason to be
I don't
depressed.
think you can be trapped by life
I
events.
think you
Not
can.
fully. Not.
Okay, hold on. Let me give you an example. So, say there's somebody who you get a high school kid, well,
Hmm.
secondary school kid here, who has a parent who's disabled,
Yeah.
and they're their main carer.
Hmm.
And nobody else is there to help them, really. So that kid has their whole life revolves around that disabled parent that they're caring for. They don't have the freedom to go out with their friends to go to the cinema.
Mm.
They can't just say all of a sudden, "Oh, we've got a project to do. Oh, does everyone come over to my house today?" They can't just say, "Yeah, okay, I'll come,"
Hmm.
because they got to go home to give mom their meds, or help them do a lot of other stuff that that kind of that age a teenager shouldn't really
I
have to
can't
do.
argue with that.
How is that kid going to better their situation so that they can go out with their friends to the cinema?
Well,
They have no way.
mm,
Their parent is disabled. They're not getting any better. They can't really get any help.
that's a tough one. That, to be honest, that
So
is a good example.
that's
I
what I
can't
mean.
argue with that.
So that kid is probably going to be depressed and for very good reason.
Yeah, all right, okay, okay.
The
There are situations, but I think a lot.
and that's where the saddest thing. I don't need to take this a step further, but I'm gonna for some reason. That kid's only way out in a horrible way is for that parent to
To
not
die.
need them anymore.
To die.
Essentially. And then that kid's riddled with guilt as well because you can't blame them for wanting for that because that is their freedom, but they love their parent and that's a horrible situation. That's depression.
Okay.
That's real depression.
Is that something you went through or someone you know went
No.
through? Okay.
No, but I don't think you need to know someone or
Hmm.
whatever to be able to
I
feel for that kid.
I know someone. I know someone who's going through that exact situation, but they're not a kid. It's a woman who's in her early 50s.
Well, I know, okay. I know people like that who have done that for parents too as well, and they're trying to
Mm.
hold a job down at the same time and it's a lot of the same things, but I chose the kid example because that's probably going to go on longer.
Mm.
Whereas at least when it's somebody, again, this sounds horrible, but like my friend who was in her 50s and taking care of her mom died. She was looking after her for 2 years, 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, it could have been 5 years in total, because it's a gradual thing, dementia. And, bless her, she said the same thing. On the one hand, she was really sad her mom had died, but on the other hand, it was a relief.
God, I can't imagine.
I know, it's a horrible
That's
thing.
fucked up, innit?
It is. The way we treat old elderly people is horrible, and the way that that the relatives have to take on to give them the best care, the relatives do need to do it because, again, my opinion, I would, if it was my parents, I would much rather look after them than trust their care to a care home.
At the same time, though, you only get one life yourself.
When my parents want that, there you go. That's the question to ask them. But I wouldn't trust them. But
Holy crap, we've been going for an hour.
I'm not surprised.
Hmm.
But okay, we got to get on to Israel though.
Okay, let's go to
We're
Israel.
going a little all over the place here, but we got to do Israel.
We've got a lot of subjects to cover.
And an hour is a good time. So if we round it out with Israel, and then we could always do this again and make it a multi-segment thing. But
Hmm. Well, we could do. The thing is,
sorry, I've got all
re-
the smoke going in his face.
The
That's
reason
why.
the reason I've changed subjects is because there's quite a few things I want to talk to you about,
Okay.
and we could do multiple episodes, but like I figured it'd be easier to spend a bit of time here, bit of time here, bit of time here. But yes, so
Yeah.
I think when you come to Palestine, Israel, I think we've already spoke about this. We're on the same page, pretty much. Like,
Well, I think things have developed since then, so I don't know.
I would say three basic truths, right?
Mm-hmm.
What Hamas has done is horrendous and is very wrong. One correct.
Yes, we both condemn Hamas.
Condemn.
Full stop.
What Israel is doing in response to the Palestinian people is wrong. And number three,
No, okay. There's elements of it that I think are wrong. There are elements of it that I think are justified.
I think there are the elements that are wrong heavily outweigh the ones that are justified heavily.
Okay, well, that's the part we're going to debate about.
Yeah.
But okay, go on with your third one.
Third one is this is all in the context of the fact that Palestine Palestine Israel is a segregated
Oh.
society. It's a
Yes.
two-party. It's two
Yeah.
segregated society. What's the word I'm looking for?
Apartheid.
Apartheid.
Yeah,
It's an apartheid
like
state,
South Africa. Yeah.
and there are two classes of citizens. Can I say Palestinians don't they have their passports taken, and
Okay.
they can't freely leave their country to go and travel the world. They're living in
Okay, hold on. Let's be clear. Are we talking about Palestinians in the West Bank and within Israel? Or are we talking about, because we need to separate those from the Palestinians in the Gaza Bank because they have two different administrations.
Why do we have to separate those two?
Because the West Bank is still administrated by Israel. As far as I'm aware, I might have the details here a bit wrong, but basically you have what I understand as Israel and the Palestinians within Israel that have borders of Palestine. So bear with me. So you've got the majority of Israel, and then you've got primarily the West Bank, and I think the Golan Heights is part of it too. And the West Bank and the Golan Heights are supposed to be safe and the place of the Palestinians, what I'm going to refer to as the Palestinians within Israel. They are governed and represented by the Palestinian National Authority, I'm pretty sure is what they're called.
Mm-hmm.
They are the same authority that used to be in charge of the Gaza Strip before Hamas. And since Hamas took over the Gaza Strip, Hamas only controls the Gaza Strip. They don't control anything to do with...
You're saying Hamas controls, almost like a government controls the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, they were the elected government.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yes. So this is one of the things I looked up beforehand because I knew a tiny bit, but then I looked it up before tonight just to scrub up on my knowledge here. So basically, this goes, it goes back to it goes back to the First World War if you want to start from the beginning. We won't go that far, but in 2007, we'll start there.
Mm.
You had a democracy set up. So we had Egypt was technically in control of the Gaza Strip, and Israel had their military occupying it, maintaining security, shall we say. They oversaw elections, and for a while, I think I have some of these details mixed up a little bit, to be fair, but the Palestinian Authority, or the Palestinian Liberation Party, I think they were called, they won the first election, or one election, and they ruled and were in power for 4 years with this sort of setup going on. And actually, sorry, it was when they won the election and everything, that's when Egypt handed power over and let them take over. And they were left-wing, they were Western-friendly, everything like that. And that's when Egypt pulled out. And that's when Egypt stopped occupying the Gaza Strip. Mm-hmm. And kind of, we all left them to their own devices because they'd had a democratic election and they'd elected this liberation party, and there was all the hopes that everything was going to go well for the Gaza Strip. Mm-hmm. Then they ruled for 4 years, as most democratic governments do, and then there was another election. And then at the next election, Hamas won.
I think it's like Hamas, the militant group, or is Hamas...
Hamas, the political group, but Hamas has the political party and the militant wing. And even the political party, it's in their main, not just their manifesto, because manifestos change, it's in their central tenets of Hamas to eliminate Israel.
Yeah, I kind of get that though, because if you look at the context of the Palestine, like if you look at the map of what Palestine was, they've been pushed out. They've been repeatedly. So for decades and decades and decades. Imagine we were Palestinians living here. This is our house in here.
Okay, so say we're Palestinians living in Israel at the time. What wasn't Israel at the time before it was Israel?
Wherever you want to call it, Palestine, Israel.
Yeah.
You've lived there. Your family's lived there for generations.
Yeah.
Your whatever, your kids, your grandparents, whatever.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, bang at the door. Open the door. You've got Israeli soldiers and it's like a mob outside, and they're taking your house. Pack your shit. Pack your shit right now.
Yeah.
You're leaving.
Okay.
You've been dragged to your house, and your house is now just being given to somebody else.
Yes. Okay.
And you've been there. Been there for generations. Now, can you tell me that you would not be absolutely?
Of course, I'd be pissed off.
Voting for Hamas, like.
Well, okay. Situation. And which generation are you talking?
That's been rolled out repeatedly for decades. It's not happened once.
No,
it's happened systematically.
It has happened, but it's happened in waves.
Systematic waves though?
Well, so I mean, you've got like the initial creation of Israel after World War II, and the Jews, but even that's not so simple. Before we actually, signed the Balfour Agreement and created Israel, well, I mean, that didn't actually create Israel. That was just Britain saying, we support the idea of doing it. Mm-hmm. But basically, before the creation of Israel, after World War II, you had Jewish people already moving to the area, starting their own little settlements. And they were, as far as I know, not so much kicking Palestinians out of their houses and stealing them. They were just finding this little patch of land and building a house. Mm-hmm. And then enough of them went there, and then they all started fighting each other. And then, there was little skirmishes going all over the place constantly. So the Western world thought, you know what, we need to do something here. And I'm not saying creating Israel was the perfect solution. It wasn't. I still don't think it was really a good decision, to be fair.
I think it was a political decision to have
It's always a
help
political
destabilize.
decision.
I think it's
Exactly. It was to try and help stabilize. We did it for the
destabilize, not
no.
destabilize.
No, we did it with the right intentions at this point, because at this point we've already sequestered it into Palestine and Iran and all that, because that happened after World War One. That happened another 50 years earlier than that.
I just want to take you back to really understand what's going on in the Middle East. I think you need to look pre-World War One, because the Middle East, right,
Well, very
was
World War One, you're just talking Ottoman Empire.
exactly right. So the Ottoman Empire
Yeah.
is was a massive. It was a very. It was a power.
It was pretty big, yeah.
It was a power to rival Europe.
Yes, it
It was
was.
an adversary.
Yes,
It
that's why we were
was
so damn sure, like, we need to beat them.
Yeah, but I think there's been an intention after World War One to split up to destabilize. If you destabilize the Middle East,
Yeah.
it will never be one country ever again.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
if you completely fucking fracture this thing up and break it all up, so you create Israel, you create Iraq, you create Syria,
Yeah.
you let Saudi Arabia do its thing, become a state. You ensure that region and those people will never unite again into a fighting force to threaten you.
Okay.
And if you
Yes.
look at it like that in a historical
And that's
context, it makes
happened
a
in
lot of
every
sense.
time every empire has broken up ever. The same as how the Roman Empire, when it started fracturing. On the one hand, you can say, yeah, the who was in power still at the time? I'm talking about when the Roman Empire disillusioned, and you had the rise of countries like France and England who fought each other constantly, and you had, you could say it was all engineered by Rome, or it was all engineered by. It wasn't engineered by anyone. It was still that those places had their own cultural identities over a long-standing time.
Yeah, that's different. That's
No,
different.
hear me out. Hear me out. And yes, certain countries would back one or back the other for their own reasons or for their own priorities.
Uh,
But again, that's just smart. And at the First World War, yes, it was all of Western Europe against the Ottomans. And the Ottomans, hold on.
well, and Germany.
Yes, and yeah, okay, I'm
Austria.
talking. Yeah, that's Western Europe. So, yeah, well, oh, sorry, no, the Germans were the back.
We were fighting Germany,
Yeah, we're fighting
Austria,
Germany and
the
Austria.
Ottoman
Yeah,
Empire.
sorry, yeah, you're right. And the Russians were on our side. Sorry,
Yes.
that's what I'm forgetting about. But point is, it was allies against Austrians, like you said, Germany, Austria, and the Ottomans, because they were the Axis, if we're going to use those terms.
Mm.
It wasn't just us splitting countries up after we got Iran.
that's
Hold on. Iran became a country because Iran joined our side. We got something Faisal was his name, and the Iranian front, or the Iranian, they actually fought with us to help to fight against the Ottomans as well, because they wanted independence. So yes, there were a lot of countries that and they actually felt really betrayed when a secret agreement came out that we had negotiated with France, saying when the war is over, if we beat the Ottomans, this is how we're going to carve it up.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
never in the. That was the
That wasn't in the agreement with the Iranians,
Yeah.
and they were really pissed off about that.
Well,
Fair enough.
The Arabs were told
But-
that they'd be given their own country as well. But
Yep.
can I say, Iraq was created and given to Britain. Syria was created and given to France.
Not given to.
Well,
We were
it just-
administrating it.
Well, but the resources, the whole
Yeah.
resource of that area
Yeah.
was administrated, so controlled
Yes.
by France, the UK.
Oh,
and then,
that's such an evil thing, because this one region that's only ever been a region of a bigger empire and administrated by the Turks before that, because the Ottomans were the Turks. So it's not like they were administrating it themselves to begin with under the Ottoman Empire. You're switching one administration for another.
Okay, but you promised the people of that land that if they fight to overthrow the Turks,
Yeah.
then they'd have their own land. But in a way, yes, what you're doing is it serves two things. So one, you're obviously extracting the oil out of that country. Two, is you have now destabilized
Hold on, World War One. We didn't know we weren't really extracting oil really then.
If you go back to
We were just discovering oil and how to extract it at that point. We didn't, we would maybe just figured out like
no,
we're planning ahead, but
1910, 1915, Henry Ford had his cargo and we had petrol. We were already on oil, trust me.
We were doing it, but we weren't worried about like getting our companies to go out to Iraq and get theirs and send it back home. We weren't that far yet. We were planning for it because we knew that oil was going to be important.
We knew there was a lot of oil in Iraq.
Yes.
And so the British had Iraq before the Americans. But anyway, the point is destabilizing the region. So splitting it all apart, separating all these countries,
yes.
Israel.
I know. But again, everyone says that like, oh, we split these countries up because we did it based on the demographics and we wanted to split Sunnis and Shias and we put places like these ones had loads of resources. In this country, we left no resources. A lot of those borders were roughly, okay, we fiddled with them a little. Mm-hmm. A lot of those regions were roughly the same areas of the region that the Ottomans had. Mm-hmm. So the Ottomans still designated Palestine as Palestine, but Palestine was a region within the Ottoman Empire. We didn't draw those borders. Those borders were already there to a degree. We did, like I say, we did fiddle with them somewhat. Who's not going to? And this is, again, every country is always going to act in their own self-interest because they have to for the good of their own people. And their own people are always every government's first priority.
Do you think we'll ever unite into one people?
I hope not. Because the only way that will happen is if you have one person in power, which is way too much power for one person and could only be done by a dictator.
Or an AI.
Yeah. Basically, if we're all one people, it's because we're all slaves.
I can't argue with that in a way. I can't argue with that in a way, like.
And then we also have a monoculture. Where's the diversity there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I like small communities, but then again, you need to stop communities from killing other communities. That's the problem.
Exactly. The more, it's nice to have a small community, but it's about keeping things within reason. Like I said, to begin with, when we're talking about socialism and capitalism and that scale, it's where is the middle of that scale? Well, not necessarily the middle. What is the best point along that scale to be? It might not be the middle. It might be better off one way more than the other. But you've got to have some element of socialism where you have an element of community and people looking after each other, whether it's just the ladies we know looking after their elderly parents, or it's we all pay our taxes and have higher taxes and then there's more care workers, but we all have to trust the care workers to look after our parents for us instead and just hope that they're getting paid enough and have enough time and less pressure and resources to do a good job. And that's where the two conflict, because people who are more of my end of the spectrum, we'd rather look after everything ourselves, or as much as possible ourselves, because we trust ourselves more than we trust the state. Mm-hmm. Whereas the more towards the socialism side of things you get, the more you have to trust the state to look after things for you. Where everybody gets it, because at the same time, a lot of it comes down to luck. They could throw around the word privilege, but privilege at the end of the day is luck. It's just whatever family you're lucky or unlucky enough to be born into. Mm-hmm. So if you're lucky and born into a wealthy family, you're going to have all the advantages in life. You might not take them. There's still lots of rich kids who end up on the streets because they, started doing drugs and party too much and blew a bunch of money and then their parents cut them off, or, whatever. Mm-hmm. Or gamble all the money away. And then there's lots of poor kids who have no advantages in life but still end up multimillionaires because they've made a success. They had a good idea and worked hard and got lucky with an opportunity that did come their way.
Well, I think that's about cultivating personalities, isn't it? Like the kid without the opportunities had to make his own opportunities, and in the turn became a stronger, more resilient, more resourceful person.
But then that poor kid may have also had really good parents.
He must have had he might have also had really bad parents.
He might have. Maybe that rich kid had really, really terrible parents. You can have a rich kid with terrible parents who has just as bad outcomes as a poor kid with good parents, or better. You know the point I'm trying to make there.
Yeah. So I just drifted a bit. I think about the climate quite a lot, you know.
I know you do.
How can
I
you
don't
not?
think about it as much because we have more imminent threats to existence.
I
I
don't think. No,
mean,
I don't think we do.
I'm just as worried about the
Besides
climate
nuclear
as I am
war,
about AI.
I think. See, right, the climate. The way I look at the climate is it is right. The way I look at the climate is like this, right? It's a really good analogy. If you just let me
Go on,
explain the analogy,
go
right?
on.
So you're at the top of a hill that goes curves down like this, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got a pram with a baby in it,
Yeah,
and the pram starts very slowly rolling towards the hills, very slowly.
yeah.
And first of all, like you said they're rolling away, and first of all, the argument is we're arguing is the pram is the pram really moving? That is the argument. So we're debating whether to even start following the pram to even try and catch it. So
No, I'm saying we don't have legs to run after the pram yet, so there's no
so
point chasing it.
well,
I
we
mean,
have,
that's a really harsh, blunt way of putting it, but
but the pram goes off the edge. It's like the end of, in my opinion,
yeah.
the end of everything. So
Hmm.
it's something that cannot be lost. So we have to invent legs whilst walking. We just have to do it, right?
We do.
So first of all, the argument is the pram really moving? Okay. Once after maybe a while's passed, the pram's now picking up speed,
Yeah.
and we've agreed the pram is moving. So hang on, let me
Yes.
finish now. So
Okay.
we agree. So now the next argument. Okay, let's start walking after the pram. Oh, that's the next
Yes.
start. Should we start walking after the pram? After a while, we've decided we're going to start walking after the pram. But at this point, the pram's now rolling a bit faster than walking speed and getting further
Okay,
away
I
from
get
you.
you. I get
And
you.
it's
So
like,
we're constantly chasing it, and it's going to
but
go over.
but
Yeah.
the pram's picking up speed,
Yes.
and now we say okay, we need to increase our speed maybe to like a gentle jog.
Okay. Okay. I get
And
your analogy. It's going on a
but you
bit.
get the point, right?
I do, but to put this in practical, real world terms, I'm not disagreeing that the pram is rolling. I'm not disagreeing that
And picking
climate
up
change is
speed.
happening or picking up speed or any of that. Where I disagree with you is what we do about it. Because anything, whether it's insulation or switching to electric vehicles, which personally I think is stupid. I think biofuel makes a lot more sense. Electric vehicles doesn't. And but all of that, even if we did everything we could in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference.
Big global revolution. Sorry, it has to be global. Yeah, right. It has to be
So
global.
what is the protest here? What is jumping on a snooker table? What is sitting on a track in middle of an F1 race?
We need
What good does that
everybody in the
do?
world. Everybody
It's
has to do their own
okay. So
country.
then go protest in
No,
China.
no, no. Thing is, the people in China have to do China. The people in the UK have to do the UK. People in
Okay, but like
America
I
have to do
say,
America,
and
and we've
even
all
if
got
we
to
did
do
everything
it.
in the UK, it would literally we make 1%. Okay, so and bear with me here because again, this is where I take issue with just stop oil because if the thing that you could do here that would make the biggest difference is if we took all the manufacturing that we have outsourced to China because that's what they need their coal for. That's what pumps out all their emissions. If you brought all of that back to the UK, so suddenly we started making our own steel again,
Hmm.
and we started mining again, and we started doing all that stuff again, our emissions would jump. That is the best thing we could do. And then start making that as clean as possible.
Mm.
But we'd only be able to do that if we actually got more oil out of the ground to run all of this and burned more coal because you can't make steel without coal yet. As far as there's some research that we can maybe do it without, but not on a grand scale. It's not being employed yet, industrial, as far as I know. But that's what I'm saying. If we brought it all back, yeah, okay, we'd have to use coal for a while at first to make all this steel. But we could probably come up with a way of making it without steel and then switch over. And we would do that a hell of a lot faster than China probably would. But no one on the environmental side of things seems to look at these as long-term arguments and
so
realize, hey, you know what?
argument.
Maybe to reduce the world's carbon emissions, we actually have to increase our own carbon emissions first to then be able
No
to do
time.
more about
Right,
it.
no, that's just
So
that is
you'd
not.
rather rely on China?
that is just not an option. So right, so we like
Everything is an option. Why isn't it an option?
I'll tell you why. Because this situation with the climate emergency
Yes.
is non-negotiable.
Okay, but all
It is
you're
like
doing
it's
is
like
telling me how dire it is. You're not telling me how you could actually fix it.
I won't. I'm coming to that.
All right, go on. We'll cut to that.
We'll cut to that. So I think the entire economy has to be redesigned from the ground up.
We
So,
can't do that
but-
until we can make renewables work.
No, so
Because the economy is based on electricity and power.
no. The economy is based. The economy is based on profit.
It
Right,
is,
it's-
but
it's-
nobody can make profit without power.
No, but no, the problem is the entire world, all the power in the richest countries in the world, and it's so profit driven, and politicians make decisions based on the profits of private companies. I think we need
Yes,
to
but you
change
forget that, private companies are owned by people and are run by people and make jobs for people.
Yeah, but if the entire point of the entire company that owned by a person, then
Yes.
end goal is to make money
Yes.
for the owner, right?
Yeah, no, for the investors.
For the for the investors, right?
Yes, the
Now-
investors are usually pension funds.
That
And
no, not always, not
a lot
some
of the
them,
time they are. Some of them, yes, are private investment groups or people's trust funds.
Okay, so you want
Those
the
trust
solutions.
funds then invest in stuff, and that's what keeps the economy going. They're
Okay.
not these evil, horrible things. Profit isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, but at the expense of a planetary destruction and environmental destruction. But when
Not
let me answer your
every
question.
profit, not every
I want
company
to-
is destroying the environment to make
No.
profit.
That's true, but I
And
wanna
even
go back
oil.
to solutions for a second.
Okay, go back to solutions.
I want to go back to the solution. So so all these solutions, by the way, are going to require hundreds of billions of pounds of investment.
Yeah.
And a hell of a lot of legislation.
But that's all by the by. Where your investment's coming from and everything, what you need to know is what are you investing in?
Okay, so first of all, these two things have to happen simultaneously. We'll end the animal agricultural industry, 99%.
Okay, then everyone starves immediately.
Immediately, like transitioning
Yeah.
is the grains and the food that has been mass produced to feed all those livestock is then repurposed as food for humans, and you need about.
It wouldn't give us the nutrients we need.
No, it does, because he does. So listen to this, right?
Yeah, we're all
It's
going to live off grain.
Yeah, it's 100x fold to create beef. So there's 100 times as much calories goes into creating from the grain goes into
Yeah.
the cow to create that amount of calories of the cow. So you have
Yes.
you have 100-fold increase
Okay.
in calories.
Okay.
Food.
You're looking at it just from calories. I'm looking at that beef as protein.
Okay.
To
You can
get
grow
hold
protein.
on, you can grow protein, but you're gonna have to have monoculture, which I know you guys don't like. You're gonna have to have fields and fields and fields of monoculture of those
No.
beans. What are those beans? Because there's only very few of certain beans that are gonna give you enough protein to replace the meat that you're
That's the other
losing.
thing, right?
So you're gonna have to have monoculture fields as far as the eye can see of these beans to
No.
replace the protein.
No, you're wrong. Sorry, I'm not. That's sorry. No, you're not wrong, but that's not what I will do. So what you then do is then begin to transition from monocrop agriculture to permaculture.
Okay, how are people getting their protein?
So you plant protein.
You can, but you're gonna have to plant so many more because there's only there's only a few, that's what I'm saying. There's only a few beans. I believe, I can't remember the ones that they're called, but there's like 4 or 5 because I've looked into this on vegetarian diets. And it's doable for a small amount of people. But to have a planet wide of people trying to replace all the protein they need from these few beans, you're going to have to grow nothing but those damn beans.
But but the thing is though, I mean, you're already wasting 99% of your production just to feed the cow.
Yeah,
Like,
but
you've
you're
got
looking
100
at it.
You've got 100 times.
Yes,
like,
of calories. But you're talking about grain carbohydrate calories making protein.
I think it could be done very
You
easily.
can't substitute protein for carbohydrates.
I think
You're just looking at it as calories.
the amount
when
of
it
land-
matters more, there's more to it than that.
with the amount of land that would be freed up, like you're talking.
You freed up for all these bean fields.
Well, maybe the thing is, it wouldn't be monocrops, so you'd have
You'd
beans
have
and
to,
different plants
yes,
growing
but you'd have
together
to
in this.
have so many more beans than you would anything else
Okay, do
to
it.
because
Okay, why not?
one of
Let's
those
do it then.
beans is like 0.1% of the protein you get from a piece of beef.
Okay, let's get really good at growing beans then. We've got the land. Like you've just freed up
Okay,
millions and millions
but
and
you don't
millions of
want
acres.
monoculture, and you're gonna have to grow because, like I say, you don't get anywhere near as much protein from that one bean
Uh,
as what you do. Okay, I'd have
I
to
don't.
look at the
I don't think
ratios
that's. I don't
here.
think that's true.
And plus,
I've
and the other reason why that won't work is because you're just looking at it from a dietary perspective. To be able to do that, you're obliterating a bunch of cultures. There are lots of cultures. I mean, the Indians, like, where they've got the whole the cow is sacred.
no. Enough.
And
Enough.
you want to just not have cows anymore?
No, we can still have cows. We can
We
have.
just can't eat them,
I
even
said
though that was the only reason.
99%.
There's no such thing as a wild cow. That was
So
a, you know.
hear me out a second. Hear me out. So if you got all the mammals on Earth and put them on a weighing scale, I think something like 66% of all mammals
Yeah.
of the weight would be cows and chickens. Like I'm not saying
No, I know, I know.
I'm
It's a
not
lot of
saying the
them.
cow is extinct. I'm
Yeah.
saying 99% reduction.
Yeah.
So and there would still be meat available. Here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
So then,
Okay.
let me
Okay.
take
This
back.
is nice to hear.
So there would still be meat available. Let me go back to the permaculture thing. In fact, I'll stay on this for a second. So the production of meat is very environmentally destructive. Monocrop culture is extremely destructive.
Yeah.
Destructive. Methane from cows is destructive. So you're replacing all that disruption with permaculture, which the permaculture becomes a carbon sink just due to the microbes in
Yes,
the
I know, but
soil.
I think
Draws carbon. So
this is a lovely theory, but
you're
it's
replacing
not practical
you're,
in any way.
you're replacing a positive with a negative.
Yes, oh,
And
it sounds beautiful.
and let me go back to the meat still being available.
Yeah.
Like there'd be a certain percentage of meat that is still allowed
Yeah.
as long as it meets these requirements, like grass-fed beef, for example. Like
Okay.
there'd be a small amount of grass-fed beef
And
available.
only the rich would be able to buy it then.
That's true. So yeah, if you wanted a turkey for Christmas, it might cost you
That's not
five.
very socialist.
Well, maybe you have a limit then, so the rich can't buy so much
Okay,
meat.
all
It's
right.
like
I've got
everyone can only
another good
buy.
rebuttal to that. What do you do in the areas where there isn't arable land? There's a lot of countries in the world. Italy, for instance, I think 10% of their land mass is arable, where you can actually grow food. Let me
Indoor.
finish. Greece, less so. India, I think a good chunk of their population rely on chickens to eat because in certain parts of India is very dusty. There's not a whole lot you can grow there. So what are you going to do in those non-arable lands? You can maybe put some canals in the desert places, but what are you going to do in Greece where it's not to do with the rain, it's because it's rocky as hell and it's not flat and you can't cultivate it.
It has to be for meat to be allowed. It would have to be environmental, like be a carbon sink in a way, and not be a carbon emitter. You can do it in a way
then a
that's
lot of people are going to die because there's no way that you can have enough animals roaming essentially wild is what it sounds like what you're going
if
at.
we
Like
don't solve this problem, a lot more people will die than
then a lot of people will die and then we won't have the problem because there'll be less people and everything else will fall apart. We'll end up as hunter gatherers again anyways and then problem solved.
we need to solve this problem in a way that doesn't end in cannibalism and
Okay, but your problem, your solution just makes that happen even sooner.
not that. Well, we need to. Would you not agree that the current state of the world, the way it's set up, the way it's profit driven, the way it's destroying the environment needs to be changed to something
Um,
better?
I think some things need to reform to some extent, but I don't think we need to start from scratch. That's
Not
anarchy.
not from scratch, not from scratch, but we need to change
We
like
always need to
a hell
change.
of
We
a
always
lot.
need to
We need
develop.
to
We always need to progress. But you do that best by making one change at a time that has a big impact and makes things more efficient. That's why industrialization was such a big
we're
deal
out of
and
time.
actually a good thing.
But we're out of time. I'm sorry, but like with the feedback, we're out.
All right, if we're out of time, this is my other argument to climate change. If we're really out of time and people start dying because of climate
Which
change,
they are right now.
where?
Horn of Africa, It's not rained in 5 years.
That's more because Ukraine shipments of grain aren't getting to them anymore.
No, it's not rained in 5 years. It's like
That's not normal, or that's not new to them. They've had droughts before.
not. No, this is the worst drought. No, right. So
Since the early 90s when we were all getting, Feed Africa and Ethiopia, oh, look at all the starving children, and there was that's why we had Live Aid.
So, because I'm saying, this is why I'm almost going from we can change the world to prepper, which is why I'm now learning to forage. But like we have seen a massive increase in droughts, heat waves, and crop failure globally over the last few years.
But show me one person who's actually where you can say, and any meteorologist will say this. You can talk about individual events as being unprecedented, but we don't have enough data overall for anyone to be able to say that's because of climate change.
I got you there.
This storm that we just had, this storm Kieran, that's because of climate change.
No, they'll say this drought that happened, say in Ethiopia, we can't say it was caused by climate change, but we can say this was made 30 times more likely because of climate change.
Okay, fair enough. But then because you can't say it happened because of climate change, you can't say that, oh, that's a climate change refugee. At the moment, until there's an island that's populated by people where the rising sea level sinks that island and those people's houses are all destroyed, then those will be climate refugees. But as far as I'm aware, that hasn't actually happened yet. It's close, and it's probably going to happen. But you guys are all jumping the gun that we don't actually have any climate refugees yet.
So, right,
They're coming. They're coming.
But we
don't have them yet.
The way I'm looking at this is we're all on a big boat, right? And the boat's starting to sink.
I know you're making the same analogy again.
I know, but we're the industry we have on Earth now is shooting more holes in the boat. And I'm saying we need to completely change the way we operate. We need to stop putting more holes, start repairing holes, and start.
In the meantime, we need to bail the water out while we're figuring out how to plug the holes.
We need to do it all at the same time.
Well, we don't have the stuff to plug the holes yet, is what I'm saying. So all we can do is bail.
We're not even bailing though. We're
bailing.
We're not. We're creating.
Oh, come on! How many wind turbines have we bloody built?
That's
bailing.
We're cutting down more jungle and we're extracting more fossil fuels.
We don't have control over people cutting down jungle.
We're not even bailing water. We're like actively bucketing the water out of the ocean and throwing it.
Not in the UK. The UK we're doing pretty good.
The UK is licensing.
And all we have is licensing for more oil, which we need in the meantime until we can make renewables actually work, which they don't yet.
I think we're done. Honestly,
like I say, until we can store energy from the renewables, which we can't do yet. I'd love to know why. I'd love to know the ins and outs of that. We seem to have batteries that can store energy for other things, but we can't store. I mean, I guess you're talking grid level power, but But once we can figure that out, then we got something.
Oh, we're about to run out of memory. 10 seconds. I'm very sorry.
Well, that's okay. Now I finished my point.
We are the tongue that speaks the truth. We are the song upon the wind. We are the courage to stand forth. We are the change that now begins. On this good green earth, we will take a stand with an open heart and a healing hand. With an open heart and a healing hand.